Welcome everybody to today's live webinar. We are covering Intro to the Internet. My name is Rebecca Van Dusen and I am a library associate here at the Champaign Public Library. If you've attended any tech workshops in person, you've probably seen me assisting with those or teaching. And I also teach some webinars occasionally. And I work at the information desk on the second floor of the library. So if you're ever in, you might see me there. Now, before I introduce our technology librarian, Susan Winkler, I'd like to mention that we are open to the public currently, but you can always give us a call, chat with us online, or email with us at librarian@champaign.org if you wanted to ask a reference question or get any information. And we're still continuing to offer curbside services. So if you don't want to come inside the building, you can schedule a curbside appointment to pick up anything you might have on hold. And you can also check our website for any changes to our services. Right now we're kind of doing a grab and go model, but if that changes, check out our website, it'll be updated. And we are also still offering our Book a Librarian service virtually. So if you need help one-on-one with a staff member for a certain topic or question, you can request a session by visiting champaign.org/book-a-librarian. And then you'll fill out that form on that page, and then a staff member here will give you a call or correspond over email with you so that you can meet and help answer your question. And I'll put that link to that form in the chat because I know it's kind of weird speaking the whole link out. Let's also go over some Zoom features available to you. So if you hover your mouse near the bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll see some icons pop up. So you'll see an icon that looks like a chat bubble. If you click on that button, that's going to let you type in any chat questions you might have to us or any comments you have during the webinar. While Susan's doing the demoing and going over what we're covering today, I'll be in the background helping to answer questions, and I'll also relay stuff to Susan. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Put those in the chat. I can always pose something to Susan or have her demonstrate something again. We do that quite often, so don't feel like you're interrupting at all. That's what we're here for. You'll also see a little raise hand icon. So if you click that, that will indicate to me that you're raising your hand and you might want to speak your question rather than writing it out. So we have people do that if they have a lengthy question that they don't want to type in the chat box. Use that raise your hand feature. And of course, if you have any other questions about the Zoom controls, just let me know. I'm happy to help. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's welcome Susan Winkler, our technology librarian. Hi, Susan.
Hi, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today for our Getting Started or Intro to the Internet. It's actually a lot more interesting than I think we give it credit for, and kind of because it's ubiquitous now. I mean, everyone uses it every day. You may not even realize that you're using it. In the days before the internet, things were quite different. So I'm happy that everyone is here today. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And so again, it's going to get a little, if you were here for last week, it's going to get a little meta for just a second while I switch to the PowerPoint here. And then I'm going to move my little share thing down there a little bit. Okay. So again, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. I am going to go ahead and get started here. And we'll advance my slide, hopefully. There we go. All right. So the things we're going to cover today, we're going to talk about some terminology and some descriptions of those terms. I do usually start every workshop with this topic, talking about the language of computers, and that computers speak their own language, and we need to learn the language of computers, and that includes a lot of vocabulary terms. And it's just like learning any other language. It does take time. So we're going to cover some stuff today so that we can also speak language of tech and computers. We're going to talk about URLs and browsers. And don't worry if you don't know what a URL is yet. You're going to learn that today. Browsers and search engines, we're going to talk about both of those. We're going to talk about search engines when we talk about tips and tools for searching online. And there are differences, and we'll get to those. We've added, the last time we taught this class, we had a lot of folks asking about how to bookmark things. and how to clear their history. So we added a little section in there for making the internet browsers work for you, to help you do what you want to do. I like to say that tech should help, not hinder. And one of the ways to make that happen is to have people tell us what they want to learn, and then we can show you. So we've added that section. Safety and security could entirely be its own class. And in fact, if you were here last month, we did have the Attorney General's office here talking about safety and security, identity theft, and issues with scams online. We're going to cover some stuff very briefly. It might seem like a lengthy section today, but really quite just the tip of the iceberg, as they say, for safety and security. But we'll have some suggestions. You can feel free to take or leave those suggestions. As with anything, it's up to you in your personal day-to-day existence whether you choose to follow them or not, or choose to implement them or not. It's totally up to you. There will be a section of other terms to know. These are things that we may not actually discuss today, but are in the tangential relationship to the internet. There are also internet terms that we may not get too far into today, but good to know. And then I will go over some additional resources at the end as well. Okay. Any questions about our agenda today? If you do have specific questions, again, like Rebecca said, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll cover as much as we can. Even if it doesn't actually fit with the agenda topics or anything, we can always cover stuff at the end. And again, if you put them in the chat, then we know what stuff folks would like to learn for next time. And like you see, we do add those in the future. Okay. Okay. So if there aren't any questions before we start, I'll let Rebecca let me know if there are any questions.
Yeah, I don't see any yet, but I'll keep an eye out.
Perfect. Okay. So we're going to start with some terms and descriptions. So what is the internet? A big, vast question, right? In general, the internet is actually a system of interconnected computers and computer networks with a global scope that allow people to share information with one another. It actually does include a physical set of cables and cords. Even if you're using Wi-Fi, they are still relying on physical cables that are, buried underground. If you've heard of like fiber optic networks, all of those things relate to essentially what happens when you jump on the internet. And essentially, it's your computer sending a request to a server, and a server is basically a computer in another place. And when you want to access a certain website or a certain thing on the internet, that your computer tells the server, hey, I want to access this. That server says, okay, I can call up that information for you, and then it appears on your screen, on your internet browser. Okay? So they pull up that particular data. So the internet isn't just websites. It's actually a whole lot of other computing and tools and things. And you can see it kind of here. I like this graphic because it kind of goes into that idea that it's not just one computer. You can think it's your devices like your smartphones and your tablets. It's all the social media sites. Everything else is all in the internet. Okay. Okay. So the web, or the World Wide Web, which is where we used to get the www. So if you went to www.facebook.com or www.google.com, you were using the World Wide Web. And that is a system of online documents that are linked together. And it kind of comes from, if you think of like a spider web where they're all connected. So they're all connected in that way. The web is a part of the internet, but the internet is more than the web. Okay, good way to think about it. So the way that you normally would access the web would be through a web browser. And you can think of this as an application or a program that basically allows you to browse the internet. That's what I think of when I say browser, browsing the internet. So it's a program that allows you to view websites and navigate between them using the links that are included on those sites. So it's also used to access applications that are on the web, like your email, or to store and access documents on a web service like Google Drive. So if you've heard of Google Drive, it's basically what we call cloud storage, which means that you're putting your document up in the cloud, or going and saying, okay, server somewhere else, here's my document. I want you to keep it and store it for me until I want to get to it again. Then you get on the internet, you navigate to Google Drive, and you say, all right, I want that document opened. The server responds and opens it for you. Okay. So this graphic here, I've given you some of the major browsers: Google Chrome, Microsoft Edge, Mozilla Firefox, Internet Explorer, and Safari, which is Apple's product. These are by no means the only web browsers that are out there. These are just some of the more common ones that you tend to see already on your computer when you buy a new computer, or that you can easily download from the internet to get onto yours. And customization is a big thing with web browsers. You can customize and find which browser you like better and use that one. It's totally up to you as you play around with them and see which one you like the best. Okay. We also have search engines. And I think these web browsers and search engines get used a lot and interchangeable, even though they are not the same thing. So a search engine is the service that allows you as an internet user to search for content on the web. So it finds the keywords in websites, images, videos, and returns all of that relevant data in the search results. So while Google is a search engine, you could use Internet Explorer or Mozilla Firefox, the two of these browser choices, Mozilla Firefox or Internet Explorer, to get to and use Google to search for something. Okay, so a couple of the other ones I've mentioned here are Yahoo, which has its own search engine. DuckDuckGo is a search engine, and Bing. Bing is the Microsoft search engine. So you could use the Google Chrome browser and then go to Bing and search with Bing on the Google Chrome browser. Okay, so they're two separate pieces, two separate tools that you can use when you're on the internet. Any questions about that? Usually like to stop there because that is one of the major concepts. Okay.
I don't see any so far.
Okay, so then we've got a website, right? So a website is just a collection of pages that provide information for a business, a group, organization, or a person, or really anything that someone wants to create out there. So for example, the library has the Champaign Public Library. We have the website champaign.org, which is ours, or you can have, like the newspaper, News Gazette, or facebook.com, just about anything out there. You can even have your own personal website that's hosted by a company. So you could have a Google site that's specifically your name at google.com or whatever. Okay, so basically the website is just a collection of web pages that are linked together and relate to a business or a group or a person. Okay, all right. A web page is actually an electronic document that can either be standalone or part of a website that's written in a specific computer language that the browser translates for us. So remember when we talked about at the beginning that computer, it's kind of like the computer has its own language. And in order to translate that language, we need the browser to be able to interpret and translate it for us. So a page can include anything, text, images, links to other pages, videos, anything. So for example, here our screenshot is the Wikipedia entry for the Champaign Public Library. Okay. A home page is a specific page on a website that serves as the site's starting point. So again, for the Champaign Public Library, if you were to go to champaign.org, you would get to the Champaign Public Library's homepage. And the homepage is basically like your launching point, your starting point, or a landing page is another way you can say it. And if you're searching for a site, a lot of times the first result that will come up in your search engine is going to be the first page for that site if you're doing a general search. So if I put into my search field Facebook, it's likely going to come up with facebook.com, and then it'll take me to Facebook's landing page, which is where you would sign in to your Facebook account. Or if I was to go to say, look for Target, and I might say Target in my search results, Target or shopping or whatever, and then it's going to come up, and the first result is probably going to be target.com, which is the Target, or walmart.com, those stores, and it's going to be their landing page, which is basically then where you would go and start searching for what you want to shop for. Okay, questions about that? Good there.
We do have a question. I'll just pose it to you.
Sure.
How do you change a browser from Microsoft Edge to Google Chrome?
Yes, so I can go over that when we talk a little bit more about browsers, which we'll do in just a few minutes. And I will show you how you can go out and find ones that you want to try, and then you can download them to your computer. Okay, and then you can also, there's something called a default browser for your computer, where anytime your computer opens a link from anywhere, it will open it in a specific browser that you designate. So for example, most Windows computers, if you were to click on a link in your email from a trusted source in your email, it's going to open it likely in, Edge to start with. But if you prefer the Google Chrome browser, you can change that so that your default browser is Google Chrome instead. And I can show you how to do that. It's a little bit, it's good to wait just a little bit until we talk a little bit more about that, and I'll fit it in for you. But yes, you can change it. Okay. So Rebecca, remind me about that in a little bit, okay, when we come back to browsers.
Yes, I have the question written down.
Perfect. So I do one other term I want to mention before we move on is the cloud. And we do have a whole workshop just solely on cloud storage and what cloud storage is. But in general, cloud is a term used to describe web-based applications, which is essentially things that you access using the internet, and files and things that are stored on or in the cloud basically use a server. Remember, we said a server is basically just a computer somewhere else that's off-site from where you are, and it's accessible to you guys through a login. So for example, iCloud or Google Drive or Dropbox, you have to get to the internet, onto the web, and then put in a login and password to access your files and things that you've stored up there. Right? Okay. All right, so let me go ahead and I will go ahead and jump into information about browsers here. And I'm going to go ahead and start with, okay, so I'm hoping you can see my screen now. You see my desktop? Okay, so my desktop screen here, I've got 3 browsers right here that I can use to do any navigation on the internet. And 3, I could choose either any one of these 3. So for example, I have Firefox, Chrome, and Edge. Now, when you get your first computer, you likely have a default browser that's already installed on that computer. And if it's a Windows computer that's newer, it's going to be Microsoft Edge. So this is speaking a little bit to the question that was just asked. So if I use Microsoft Edge, and here's my search page, I could search for, Google Chrome browser and find the Google Chrome browser. I'm going to go to, Google Chrome, verify that you're on the correct site for Google Chrome, and then you can download the Google Chrome browser to your computer. Okay, and then you get the chance to use whichever one you want. And a lot of folks prefer being able to use more than one browser, because sometimes if a site doesn't work really well in the first browser, you can always try it in a second browser and see if it works better. So if for some reason it's not coming up, you can try a second browser and see if it comes up on a second browser. Sometimes there's things that happen in the background that make it so one works better than the other for accessing stuff. Okay, and we can talk more about that at the end too. But basically, whatever your default one you have, you can go in and you can download the others that are out there. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and jump back into my PowerPoint here, and we're going to talk a little bit about how URLs and sites are constructed. Okay, So we talked about at the very beginning on the agenda URLs, and we're like, we don't know what that means, because I'm going to talk about that in just a second. But I do want to mention there are two major pieces of information from your browser, and that's going to be your address bar and your search box. And sometimes what you end up with is the ability to search for stuff using the address bar. Now the address bar, if you see here in my little screenshot here, the address bar is this spot here where you see the red, I'm hoping you can see the red box around it. This is your address bar. And what you do with the address bar is that's where you would put in the address of the website you're trying to get to. So like we said, champaign.org. So I would type in my address bar, champaign.org, and then hit enter on my keyword to go to that site. Okay. If I didn't know how to get to the Champaign Public Library website, and I didn't know that it was champaign.org, I could also just type the words Champaign Public Library up here in the address bar, and most of the modern browsers will treat that like a search, and then they will search and give you search results for Champaign Public Library. Okay, I'm going to talk about URLs real quick, and then we're going to do a live demo of that. Okay, so your web address basically tells the computer the correct combination of letters, numbers, and characters to go to a particular website. I kind of explain it as if your physical mailing address, where you have your name, your house number, and your street address, and your zip code, and your city. And if something in there isn't right, the mail might not get to you. That's the same premise that works with a URL. And URL just stands for Uniform Resource Locator, which is basically a fancy way of saying, this is exactly what I am telling the computer to call up. So it's going to go out, find the server where that exists, and bring it to us in general terms. Okay, so when you're putting in an address in, you want to make sure you don't have any spaces and that you have the correct spelling. They often begin with www, which is World Wide Web, HTTP, or HTTPS. And we'll talk more about what HTTP and HTTPS mean in just a second. But if you notice nowadays, when you type in, and you notice how I said champaign.org instead of www.champaign.org, a lot of times now your modern browsers, they put in the www part for you. So you don't actually have to do that part. It'll put it in for you. Okay. We're going to talk a little bit about domains real quick. So domain basically is, it's indicated by the last few letters of the address, usually after the last period. And it will generally tell you what kind of site you're going to or you're visiting. This is a little less accurate nowadays because now you can have domains like, you can have, like puppies at, puppies.dogs.com or puppies.dogs, right? And the domain is dogs and the site is puppies. But in general, if you see .com, it's usually a commercial business or company. .org is usually a nonprofit. .gov is usually a government agency. .info just means informational site. .edu would be educational institution. So like illinois.edu is the University of Illinois. .net is usually, so for a lot of you that have email addresses at AT&T.net, that's an internet service provider. And then MIL is usually a branch of the military. And you can also get into ones where it's for a whole country. So like, I'm trying to think of one that's for a country off the top of my head. Well, if it was like .us or .usa, that would be one example. Okay. Okay. And then I'm going to cover tabs in just a second. I want to do a quick demo of this other stuff first. So I'm going to escape out of that. And we're going to go ahead and go to our site. So I'm going to pick Firefox for this part of the demo. So I'll continue to use different ones throughout. So up here at the top, if you can see that, where it says search with Google or enter address. So again, if I know the address I'm going to, champaign.org, I can just go ahead and put in that address and hit enter. and it'll take me to the Champaign Public Library homepage. Okay, and .org, we are a nonprofit, so that's where we get our .org. And if you notice, I typed in champaign.org, but the browser went ahead and added for me that the beginning of the site is actually https : Okay, so the other example I gave of like Target, if I just type in target.com, again, it's going to bring me to Target. Do the same thing with Walmart or whatever site you want to go to if you know the address. Okay, give it a second to bring up Walmart. Okay, so if I don't know the address of the site, whoops, helps if you spell it correctly. I can do Champaign Public Library and put spaces in and hit enter. And then it's going to do a search for the Champaign Public Library. And you'll notice that the first result that comes up says Champaign Public Library home. Again, that's the home page, the landing page for the library. Okay. And if I come back here and I type in, Target shopping as an example, we get target.com right here. Okay. And then it's also telling me where the local Target is. Okay. Now, if I was to come up here and type champaign.space.org, it's going to tell me I can't find champaign.space.org. I think you mean champaign.org, but I'm not positive, so I'm going to give you search results for that. If I typed in champaign.public.library.org, again, it's going to be confused and it's going to go to like some weird stuff where it doesn't know exactly what I'm trying to do. So what's important is if you're going to put in an address, that you know the address exactly and you can type it out up here. If you make a mistake, you may end up on a site that you didn't intend. And that's where we can get into a little bit of trouble with sites that are not necessarily on the up and up or are, doing nefarious things or, not where we want to be, basically. Okay. Any questions about that?
I don't see any questions so far.
Okay. So the next thing
sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
I was going to say we quite often see people that, come into the library and need help on the computer, and they're like, okay, I don't know the website, but I know where I need to go. In that case, we usually just do a Google search. So if you don't know what the exact website is, I usually just get on Google and do a search and see what it comes up with.
Yeah. And that's, again, what this address bar up here is doing for you. It's what we call an omnibox search. So it'll search so you can see, even though we're on the Firefox browser, we're going to use Google to search. Google's our search engine, to search for wherever we want to go. So you can also type it in here, which is, sorry if you can see this, where the little magnifying glass is. And generally speaking, wherever you see a magnifying glass and it doesn't have a plus or minus next to it, it means search. So a magnifying glass by itself means search. A magnifying glass with a plus or minus usually means zoom in or zoom out within most of the things you'll find with technology these days. Okay, but here I could also go ahead and type in, Champaign Public Library again and get those same search results. And we're going to do some practicing with search results here in a minute too. So, but thank you, Rebecca. Yes, good point. Okay, same thing is going to be true if I choose to use the Google Chrome browser instead of Firefox. I can type champaign.org up in there, and it's going to pull up Champaign, the homepage for the library. I could also type Champaign Public Library up there, and it's going to do a Google search for me for the Champaign Public Library. Okay. Cool. Questions? Okay. Okay.
I think we're good so far.
Okay. The next thing I want to talk about, I want to give you an example of something that can be super helpful when you're online and doing multiple things at once when you're online and doing searching or things like this. So I'm going to go ahead and go to our home page. And then let's say I'm curious about some of the online tools we have here at the library. So I might go to the e-library page, and then I'm going to find that there's 3 things I could click on over here. Well, what if I don't want to lose my place where I am on this page? I still want to look at this page. I want to see what we have to offer here. But I also want to explore these other 3 pages. Well, there's an easy way to do that, and that is going to be to click on it, but use my right mouse button and say open a link in a new tab or a new window. And to open a new tab by itself, where then you can go to whatever you want, you would use this little plus sign up here at the top. So you see where it says new tab. It's also very helpful if you hover over it, that it'll tell you it's a new tab. So if I want to be both on the library page and come over here and be on, let's see, City of Champaign. I want to find the City of Champaign at the same time. I can click on that. So now I have 2 tabs open, 1 tab for the city's website and 1 tab for the Champaign Library e-library section. Okay, does everybody see that? And you can go between the tabs just by tapping on them. So if I tap on e-library up here, and where I'm seeing that term is up here at the very top where the title is up here. So if you see the little tiny logo and it says e-library, and then here's the little tiny logo for the city, and then it says City of Champaign. And I can jump between them just by tapping on them. Okay. I can also move them. So I could say I'd rather have e-library be after the City of Champaign. And to do that, I can hold down my left mouse button and drag it over here and put them in the opposite order. So like this. So I find this super helpful when I'm, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, can you demonstrate how to open a tab again, a new tab?
Yes, I sure can. So we're going to start back here. So I have e-library and then I have the City of Champaign. I can hit this little plus sign here to get a new tab to go somewhere else. So let's have a suggestion from folks. If you want to put something in the chat of where we should go today, where else might we be curious to look for something. Anybody have a favorite site they like to go to? Maybe I don't know, maybe Yahoo. I'm just gonna go ahead and put Yahoo in there. So here I've got a new tab. And I know the address I'm going to is yahoo.com. So I'll hit enter and it'll pull up Yahoo like that. Okay. Then again, I can sort it. I can rotate these and move them around by dragging and putting my left mouse button and pulling them between each other like that. Okay. So that's a new tab. New tabs are very useful when you're doing research online and you want to keep everything that you've done so far and then add some new stuff that you want to do. Okay. So, and then you can jump back and forth between your pieces of information. When you're done with it, you can hit the little X and it'll close out of that particular tab. So one of the things I notice a lot is if people are in a tab and they don't know which tab they're in, you just want to pay attention up here. They're just like if you had a filing cabinet with file folders, like hanging folders in it with the different plastic tabs that tell you what's in it. It's just like that. So you can go here, here, here. And you can keep going and you can make a whole bunch of them all the way across. And then they'll just smoosh a little bit more. So if you see how here, City of Champaign, now you can just see City of Champaign, and then it cuts off because we've just added so many new tabs. Okay. To close a tab, I'm just going to hit that little X, right? Like that. And I can keep doing it for all the ones I no longer need. Okay. So I find it very helpful to have tabs.
You can also open a new tab with a keyboard shortcut if you do Control T.
Yes, so Control T, and if you see, I think usually, I'm not sure if it'll actually tell me here, but it'll tell me here. So yes, if I wanted, I could do Control T on my keyboard, and that will also open new tabs for me. Okay, And then when you want to close it, you just hit the little X right there. Okay. Okay. You can also, if you want to close them and you're using the keyboard shortcuts, Control W will close them. Okay. Okay. So here's something else that sometimes happens to me. In a flurry of closing a bunch of tabs, I sometimes accidentally close one that I meant to keep and to keep open. So if I accidentally close this one, I can recover it. I can get it back. And one way to get that back is to select reopen a closed tab, or to use a keyboard shortcut. And the keyboard shortcut is Control and Shift and T, and that'll bring back the tab that you just closed. Okay. Or I can, if I hit up here and I think it's, yeah, if I right click and I say reopen closed tab, that'll also bring it back for me. Okay. So these are some handy, helpful tricks when you're out on the internet and you're browsing and looking for stuff. I especially use it if I'm doing shopping online and I'm comparing prices from different stores, and I'll put the different stores up with their information and their prices to see who has the best price and what the reviews say and things like that. So I will use that often. Okay. Questions about tabs? So I encourage you to play around with them. I think they're very useful. And it's the same across browsers. So even if I was to go to, so that was Chrome. If I was to go into Firefox here as another browser, and I went to champaign.org/ I was at the eLibrary, right? eLibrary here. And I opened a new tab, and I think I went to Yahoo. And then I opened a new tab and went to the city of Champaign, which, since I don't know the City of Champaign website, I just typed in City of Champaign, and then I can find it here. Okay, same idea. If I want Yahoo to be first, I just hold down the left mouse button and move it over there. If I want eLibrary to be first, hold down the left mouse button and move it there. Okay, same thing about adding new ones. To open a new tab, Control T. To close it, Control W. Okay. If I Control W to get to Yahoo, and I hit Control W there, and then Control Shift T will open that tab back up. Or I can right click here and say reload selected tab. Oops, sorry, that was the wrong one. I wanted to do undo close tab there. So slightly different wording to do the same thing. Okay. Any questions about tabs?
I think we're okay so far.
Not so far? Okay. The next thing I want to cover is what some of these other buttons are that are on the left-hand side over here and the right-hand side over here. So a lot of what we're doing today at the beginning here is covering how to make the browsers work for you, to make it most efficient for you, for what you're doing. Okay, so I'm going to go back to, and again, I'm in Firefox right now. I'm going to go back to our eLibrary page, and then we're going to talk about what some of these other buttons are up here. Okay, so on the left-hand side up here at the top, this first button, the left button, if you see what it says, I don't know how well you can see what it says there when I hover over it, but it says go back one page. Or I can right click and pull down to show history. We'll talk about history in just a moment, but if I click on this, it's going to send me back one page, right? So if I hit it again, it's going to, or sorry, if I hit the right facing arrow, it's going to go forward one page. So it'll go back to eLibrary. Okay, so this is your back and your forward. So if you get to something you didn't intend to go to, so let's say I go to online tools here. I've moved ahead one spot. Let's say I'm like, oops, that's not really where I want to be. I want to be back on the page I was just on. I'm going to hit the back button, and it's going to go back one page. Okay. So that's your back and your forward. Same thing in Microsoft Edge. So if I go to champaign.org/e-library up here in Edge, and you see I have the same arrows. Go back, go forward. So let's go to Online Tools, and then let's go back a spot, and then let's go forward a spot. Okay? And you'll see the same thing in Google as well. Okay, so if I go to champaign.org, e-library, like that. Okay, and I hit Online Tools. I hit the back button to go back one page, forward to go forward one page. Okay. Now the other button that's over here that you can see, reload this page. It's also called the reload or the refresh button, and it's used to reload a web page that didn't load correctly the first time, or to search for new content or things. So if for some reason the online tools page didn't come up correctly the first time I hit this button, say, have you ever seen where if you're browsing online and it takes a really long time for something to load on the side of the page and it just keeps spinning and spinning and spinning? Sometimes if you click the refresh or reload, it basically resends that request to the other computer for what you want. And sometimes that ends up being a better solution than just waiting for it to keep spinning. Okay, so that's the refresh or reload. So you see how for a second there it says loading. If it just continued to say loading, 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 I would hit this refresh button so that it could refresh and try again. Okay, so that's the refresh or reload button. So if you ever have trouble online, one of the troubleshooting tips that I have for anybody is, first one is try a different browser. So if you're using Edge, try Firefox. If you're using Firefox, try Chrome, and vice versa. The second is always to hit the refresh button. So try that refresh button, okay, if something doesn't load right. Cool? Questions about that? About the refresh?
We're good so far.
Okay. So there's also a home button, and this you see a lot more often on I think nowadays with mobile browsers, which are browsers that are used on your tablets or your smartphones, more than online on a desktop computer. But your home button, and we can show you here in Firefox, is the little one that looks a little bit like a house over here, and it says the home page. So you can designate this in your settings of your browser. You can designate this to be whatever you want it to be. And then it will always go back to that if you hit this button. So if I hit this right now, it's going to take me to Firefox's homepage, which looks like this. Okay. If I do it on Edge, let's see if Edge has it. I don't see it on Edge right now. You can add it to the browsers if you want as well. And I don't think I have it on Chrome currently. I don't. But that is the home button. All right. Questions about the home button? You can get to that through your settings. And I'm going to show you where the settings are for every one of these browsers too in just a moment. Okay.
I don't see any questions.
Perfect. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is history. Your browser is keeping track of the sites that you visit and putting it into a list. And that list is known as your history. So your recent browser history, you can find, as we said, if you click on the back button here and see how now it says, here's the things I visited. I visited eLibrary and new tab. Okay, so I have a new tab and there. I could also hit show full history, and this will show me all of the sites that have been visited on this browser over a certain time period. Basically, since the last time I did something called clearing the browser history. Okay, so let's do, I don't think there's much for history because I already cleared it once today, but here's my eLibrary. So if I had forgotten where I had been before the online tools page, I can come over here and instead of hitting it, if I hold down the left mouse button, I can get the pull up list and I can see where I was. Okay, and that's your history. The other way to see your recent history is to come over to your three little dots here, which is your settings, tap there, and then see history right here. So now we can see the things that I have recently visited pretty much since starting this workshop. So I was in my email as we were getting things started. Then I went to the eLibrary and Yahoo and the city of Champaign. Okay, so those are the things that I visited on this browser. I'm going to go ahead and put that one down below. And now I'm on, let's see, I'm on Edge. If I want to see my history on Edge, same thing. If I hold down that mouse button over here on top of the back button, I'll see my browser history, my recent history here too, where I've been to eLibrary. You also see here that it says Manage History. So if I click on Manage History, it's going to show me everywhere that I was and give me the chance to clear that history. We're gonna show the clear history in just a second. Right now, I just want you to see the recent history. Okay, and again, over here, three little dots to get to my settings, and then in here, there's my history. History, recent things that I visited. Okay, so you can see that the browsers are pretty similar in the way that they handle and treat things. So over here, instead of three little dots, it's three little lines, but it still brings me to my menu where I have all these different options of things I can do, right? And then in here, I can go, okay, let's see, do I see history? I don't necessarily see history here, but I do see, let's see.
I believe it's under library.
I've got all these things. I can also search for it and just hit, history to clear it. But here, if I hit library, as Rebecca says, I can see my recent highlights, which would be my history. And then here's your history too. And you can see everything you've been to and visited. Okay. So you can see browsers are very similar in what they offer you and generally where it's located. Okay. That's the big takeaway I want you to get from those. So you can also customize your experience of your browser by going into those settings. So again, if I come up here and I want to change something, I can use these settings to change it. So I can, go into, say, logins and passwords and decide if I want to save a browser password or not, if I want to be able to customize my experience. All of that is going to be controlled and contained within your menu options over here on the right-hand side. That's also going to be true here in Firefox. Oh, sorry, I'm just in Firefox. Let me switch back to Chrome. So here in Chrome, three little dots. Come down here, settings. There's also other things I can do. I can check my history, what have I downloaded. I've got a section for bookmarks, which we're going to talk about bookmarks in just a second as well. So just give you that that's an upcoming thing. And then here's my settings. So my settings in Google, I can talk about whether I want something to autofill my address if I'm filling out forms. I can check my privacy and security settings. I can change the things and remember when we talked at the beginning about default browser? So here's where I can set Chrome to be my default browser on this computer. And I would just tap Make Default. And then it would ask me if I want to confirm that I want to use Chrome to open things instead of Edge or Firefox or whichever browser I'd already picked. Okay. Any questions about that? And about exploring your settings? So I encourage you to go ahead and explore your settings. If you want to keep a list and you change something, so if you write down what you change, experience your internet browsing and trying things, and then if you don't like it, you've got that list. So just change one thing first, then go back and reverse it. And if you don't like it, change it back. Okay? So that's something I recommend you kind of explore, because that's the only way you're going to figure out what's best for you in your experience with your browser. Okay. Questions about settings and changing some of that stuff?
think we're good so far.
Okay, I do want to show one one tip that I have for everyone that I don't know if everyone realizes that they can do this within a browser. And this is not actually in the slides, but I want to add it. So I'll make a note to add this to the slide. Remember when I said that if you see a magnifying glass and it has a plus or a minus sign in it or near it, it means to zoom in or zoom out of something. And if it has nothing inside it, it means to search. Well, you can also zoom in and out of your browser and make it bigger or smaller. Okay, so if I come over here to my three little dots and tap here, if everybody sees where it says zoom, you can zoom out like this, or you can zoom in by hitting the plus sign, and that's going to zoom you in closer. Okay, so zooming out and zooming in. And the reason I say look for the symbol, so if I go to the site right now, upload it again, okay? If you notice, if you pay attention, just next to the star here, while I'm doing this, you see how a little magnifying glass pops up with a minus sign when I hit the minus? And it looks like it has a little plus when I hit the plus sign there, right up here. So this is increasing and decreasing the size of the text in the browser. That is one of those things that I find super useful when I can't see or read things on a browser very well, okay? And you can do it in the other browsers as well. So here's Firefox. If I click here, again, I have zoom and a plus or minus, zooming out or zooming back in, okay? Same with Edge. Let me check my time here real quick too. Okay, same with Edge. You can zoom in and zoom out. Okay, alrighty. So let's talk a little bit about search tools here, now that I've done that. Your search engines. So for example, I'm going to use Firefox and I'm going to go to Google. So here I've come to Google. Don't switch. And in general, here's my Google search string where I can type something in there. You can search for anything you want. So I'm going to go ahead and search for dog food. Oops. So let's say I've got a new dog and I'm trying to research the best brands of dog food. Once I get this far, so I've just done dog food. And the first things that come up here, if you notice, right here where it says add, but it's tiny. It's not super obvious that this first link is an ad unless you notice that it says add off to the left. Same thing true. So even these first results, there's like 4 or 5 of them that are ads, right? And what if I'm researching and I want to know what's the best, you know, dog food for my dog? I'm going to have to scroll down a little bit to see if I can find something where it's actually research about what the best dog food is. Okay? So keep in mind that you want to be careful about where those ads are while you're searching for stuff. Same thing is going to be true on Bing. So if I go to Bing as my search engine and I go to dog food, same thing is going to happen here. If I'm looking at this, do you see how tiny this is where it says add? Let me see if I can make it bigger for you. So I have to increase my size quite a bit on my browser and make it zoom in 175% to see that that says add right there. And that's paid advertisements that the company is putting first. Okay, so just keep that in mind as you're browsing and searching the internet for things, that a lot of those first couple of results are going to be ads. Now maybe that's what you want. Maybe you're trying to figure out, maybe what you really want is a coupon for 30% off of dog food. So that ad is useful to you. Just making sure you know that that's what that is. Okay, questions about that?
We do have a question.
Sure.
Is there a way to stop the ads from the email accounts after searching for it in Google?
That is a very good question. The short answer is to an extent. Yes. One of the search engines that I've mentioned, DuckDuckGo, tries to protect a little bit more of your privacy while you're searching for things. So if I do that same dog food search here, you can see that, you know, they're not storing my personal info. They don't follow you around with ads. They don't try to track you. So in some cases, there are things you can do to make it a little bit easier to use search engines that don't track when you're searching. The other things you can do is things like clearing your browser history. And there are a couple of other things too, but so the short answer is yes, there are things you can do. And we can share some links to some articles in the follow-up email with some more tips about how to make that less prevalent for you. Yeah. I'm not going to say it's 100%. I haven't yet figured out how to make it 100% for myself. But it can help cut down on how much of that you see.
I think
your data,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say your data is currency nowadays. So whatever you're looking at, then you know, those targeted ads are the way that the companies are trying to make their money and also advertise to you. So
that's exactly what I was going to say. I was going to say that's why Google's search engine is free. They have those ads popping up, and when they, you know, when people click on them, that's how they make money.
Right. Same with apps. If you're, you know, if you have a free app that you're going to download to your phone, double check and see what information are you giving them in order to get that free service from them, because usually there's something you're giving to them in order to access that free service from them. So so I tend to use, if I really don't want to be tracked, I tend to use DuckDuckGo. So for example, if I'm shopping for a baby shower present for a friend, I don't want to suddenly see a whole bunch of, you know, baby shower advertisement gifts and stuff after I've purchased what I purchased for them. The other thing you can do, you could come to the library and use our computer, our public computers here at the library. It doesn't know who you are unless you've logged in with your email and purchased something through your email there, then it's linked to your email. But if you're just researching and investigating stuff, you can always come and use our computers here too. And they scrub after every person and they don't track, you know, depending on if you've signed into your browser or not. So that gets into a little bit more layered stuff. But in general, yeah, you can do what you can to try to minimize how much of that companies are tracking for you. Great question. Okay. So I've got a couple more search engine tips here that I wanted to share real quick. If you misspell a word, I love that. I'm not a great speller myself, so I do love that if I spell something incorrectly, that usually the browser will correct for it, and it'll tell you that it's including results for example, Mississippi River or rivers instead of what I actually typed. Or it'll say, you know, did you mean to type this? I'm showing you results including this. So I do appreciate that about most modern browsers and search engines both, that they do that for you too. Okay. And then usually at the bottom of the first page of results, there's these things that come up that are like, people also ask these questions, and maybe this will help you with your research. Or at the bottom, sometimes there's these related searches, and sometimes that can also help you with your research that you're doing online. Okay, kind of like the people also ask this. Don't forget, your search engines usually also have the ability to do advanced searches. So for example, here's DuckDuckGo, right? And we search for dog food. We can also search for images, videos, news, maps, shopping. We can search specific subject areas and categories for the thing that we're searching for. So for example, dog food and shopping will bring up a whole bunch of different, you know, kinds of dog food and the cost from different websites. So that's something else to consider, is that you can use that to filter. You can also see over here that in the shopping tab, there's other things you can filter by on the left-hand side, like the price or the brand. So keep that in mind when you're also using these search engines. You can also do advanced searches too. So for example, if let's see, I was using Bing here. If I want to do an advanced search with Bing, you can do, I think I might have to look for Bing advanced search. So don't be afraid to put in advanced search and then get to your advanced search options using whatever search engine it is. And then you can find, limiters, or, that's the fancy word we use for saying not this or this and this, and linking everything together when you're searching. So you can have them. This is the librarian's bread and butter, I guess, is to say we love helping people learn how to search better. So those are just some examples. Okay, if everybody is still with me, I know we're getting close to time for the hour. If you're willing to stick with me, I do want to cover some privacy and security things, and also how to do bookmarks and favorites. So those are things I want to do real quick. Okay, so for example, if I'm in, just go back to Google. So I'm on Google here, and let's say I want to bookmark the Champaign Public Library as a favorite. What that means is I'm basically going to say, Champaign Public Library here, I want to be able to get to the site very simply and easily and remember it in the future. And that gives you something called the bookmark. And to bookmark pages, all I have to do is to be a favorite or a bookmark in Google Chrome, this particular browser, is to hit this little star. I hit that little star, it's going to say it's added it as a favorite for me. I hit done, it's now a favorite. I come over here and I go to my favorites, that's going to give me a list of all my favorite websites. So if you have something that's got a really long website address, so if this is a really long address that goes all the way out here, you don't want to remember that to have to type it all in there, you can just mark it as a favorite. So for example, I know someone who really likes crochet patterns, and there's a lot of free crochet patterns that they can find online, but they have to drill down quite far to get to them, and they're really long web addresses. So just goes in, makes them favorites, puts them all together. Then it's much easier for her to find them the next time she wants to look at them. Okay, that's why I wanted to mention favorites, and that is the similar way that you would do it here. So for example, if I go to champaign.org, and this is within, I think I'm in Firefox here, and if I want to make this one a favorite within Firefox, all I have to do is click on the star that's right here to bookmark it, and then say done, and then it's saved to my library. And then all I have to do is hit this little icon that looks like little books, and then hit bookmarks, and there they are. So here's my recently bookmarked Champaign Public Library. Okay, so you can see it again, it's very similar across the browsers. If I want to highlight this one, I just hit the star, and then it's in my favorites. Okay, so I think we already made this one a favorite before. So you can see it's got the blue. The blue star equals that it's already a favorite. Okay, questions about favorites?
I think we're good.
Okay, so I want to mention again that, let's see, I didn't cover how to clear the history yet. I just covered how to get to it. So I want to cover how to clear your history. So to clear my history, if I'm in Chrome, which is this guy here, 3 little dots, and then I come down to history, and then here's where I can see all of my history if I want. If I go into my settings instead, I can type up here at the top, history, and Google does this nice thing where it'll tell you where you are, and it says clear browsing data. If I tap that, then I can clear the data. And you can select, today, the last hour, all time, whatever you want to set for there, and then clear the data. You can do the exact same thing with Firefox and Edge. You just do it slightly different to get to it. So here in Edge, if I want to clear the history in Edge, 3 little dots, and then I go down to history here, and then here's everything in my history. I've got my recently closed, and then I can select the, let's see, clear browsing type. So with these three little dots here, clear browsing data. Okay, clear browsing data. It's going to ask how long, and I'm going to say clear now. It's all time. If there were a lot of sites that you visited and it's been a while, it may take a minute or two for it to actually go through and clear all of it out, but that's how you can clear that. Okay. Questions about clearing your history?
I think we're good so far.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and head back in here to the PowerPoint. Well, actually, no, I think I'm going to do that. And then give me just a second. I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint because the next section I want to talk about is safety and security. And if you were able to come to hear the Illinois Attorney General's office, they will be coming back. Oh, it did not start on my right page. Hold on one second. They came and did a nice talk with us about identity theft and scams in the online environment. They will be coming back in the summer. So if you missed the one that was in the spring, they will be coming back. They don't do recordings of their stuff, so you do want to attend it live. But it's also a very useful webinar to attend to learn a little bit about how you can protect your identity online too. Okay, so here is our sort of tips that we've gathered. A lot of this you can find in a lot of tech articles and sort of the cautionary tales that are out there. Protecting your home Wi-Fi with a password. If you haven't password protected your home Wi-Fi, I do recommend it. Even if your guests come and it's a really long, complicated word that they have to spell out or do, and it's got lots of fun things to it, it's still a good idea that you don't leave it just as the default and you put in whatever you want. And it can be fun to come up with one too. Okay. If you're going to be on a public Wi-Fi network, so that means somewhere like a cafe in town, or maybe you're staying at a hotel and you're going to use the hotel Wi-Fi. Even if the hotel Wi-Fi has a password, you might want to make sure it's unique to your room as well, and you want to make sure that you're knowing whether or not it's an unsecure network. A website that is secure and uses encryption is going to have that HTTPS. Remember at the beginning where I told you we would talk a little bit more about that? So here's where we're going to talk about that. So the Hypertext Transfer Protocol is what the HTTP stands for, and the S stands for secure. So what that means is that it is an encrypted site, and there are industry standards now where if you're going to be giving anything like your credit card information or other personal information to the website, it's a really good idea to make sure it has that S, because that means it's secure and it uses encryption, which is another layer of helping so that your information doesn't appear, it appears in like a code in a way. Okay. You want to consider what type of information you're giving or accessing over a public Wi-Fi network. Again, for me, I'm perfectly happy going on a public Wi-Fi network and seeing if our local store has what I'm looking for. But I probably won't buy it over a public Wi-Fi network. I'm going to buy it over my home Wi-Fi network that has a password and is more secure. Okay. If I'm looking up the hours of the store, that I could easily do on a public Wi-Fi network. Okay. A virtual private network, or a VPN, these are things you can pay for, or you can find some that are free. Again, consider what you're giving up if you're using it for free. But a virtual private network is a way to further encrypt your data as you're using or sending information. I think of it a little bit, my analogy is it's a little bit like the Roadrunner and the Wile E. Coyote. And when the Roadrunner runs through the tunnel but before he does, he paints the side of the tunnel so that it looks like Wile E. Coyote could go through it, and then he instead runs up against the wall. That's kind of what a VPN is. It's another level of encryption. Okay. Questions about that part of safety and security? Okay.
Yes, hold on one second.
Okay, sure.
It says,
and
go ahead.
Go ahead.
The question was, if in a certain business environment we use their Wi-Fi network, do they store our information?
That is a question, depending on what kind of business environment you're in. There's a lot of nuances that go into that. So I wouldn't really be able to speak to specific businesses and whether or not and what information they're tracking or you're giving them. It's more, I mean, you would have to do a little bit of research. In a lot of these cases, you're gonna, it's sort of consumer be aware, and sort of the compare and be aware. So it depends. So for example, if you're staying at a hotel chain and you're using their public Wi-Fi, you might ask, what information are you collecting about the people that are using the internet here at your hotel? Will they tell you? Maybe not. Will they tell you? Maybe. It just kind of depends. So you want to make sure that you're taking on a certain amount of risk anytime you're doing anything. So that is another situation where you're taking on a certain amount of risk, and nothing is 100% secure or safe. Hackers and people who have other designs will continue to come up with new ways to work around it. So it's good to have some of this information literacy over what you can control and what you can do to prevent and or protect, but nothing's 100%. So I know that wasn't a really good way of answering anything specifically about a specific business or their internet connection. And you can go out and research online too if it's a specific place and see if anybody else has had trouble or has written anything out there about it or what they're tracking. So you may have heard about some of the social media companies and all the things that they're collecting behind the scenes. And there are some watchdog organizations and publications that kind of keep track of and write articles about what they're keeping track of. So you might check out some of those too. I know that wasn't a great way to answer necessarily a specific question like that, but yeah.
I would say if you're on a public Wi-Fi network, I wouldn't be logging into things like your bank account or stuff with sensitive information.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you're on a public connection, anywhere that's a public connection, I personally avoid putting in any personal data that relates specifically to me. That includes any kind of bank information, even buying anything, putting in my address, things like that. I tend to avoid that if I can. Yeah. Okay. Hope that helps answer a little bit of that. Oops. Come on. We're going for it. Okay. So here is a little bit about passwords. You want to make sure you have strong passwords. And again, these are suggestions. You can take it or leave it. But in general, a lot of the tech articles that we've read and our experience has been that you want to have a strong password. You're going to want to use letters, numbers, symbols. You're going to want to make them longer. You're not going to want to use one word that's something that people could easily guess about you. Okay, so here are some examples there. Passwords should keep them long, keep them random, make sure you're not using the same one for every site that you're on or that you've got an account with. Change them regularly, that's also important. So the end, two-factor authentication, I'll get to that in just a moment. Actually, we're good. So it's here's what we suggest you do versus things that you should possibly avoid doing. Two-factor authentication allows you to use a secondary device like your phone or tablet to confirm you are who you say you are when you log in somewhere. So for example, your email, if you have set up two-factor authentication, your email may send you a code to your phone, but then once you've logged into your email with your username and password, it's going to ask you to put in that code that they've just sent to your phone. And that's another extra step. There are other steps that you can do too that are even more beyond this, but those are some fairly easy things to do at the beginning that will help you with that extra step of protection. You can find random password generators online that will generate a random password, and then if you can memorize that random password, and then continue to memorize a couple of those and use them for sites too. If you can't come up with one on your own, there are also password manager apps out there. Be careful, make sure you research them ahead of time, and make sure you know and remember the password to get into the password manager apps. I know we had an experience where someone didn't remember their password to get into their password manager app, and it was very hard, which is good, but it was very hard for them to recover that password to get to all their other passwords. And they didn't remember any of their other passwords because they had been relying on a password manager. So you certainly can use them as well. Again, just give it some research ahead of time to know what you're picking. Okay. And I've put in the additional resources that PC Magazine has a list of some password generators, so does Consumer Reports, that they've evaluated. Okay. Autofill. So autofill is something that I know makes life a little easier on a browser, but it is not great from a security and safety standpoint. So consider whether or not you want to have your browser autofill your data. That could be anything from your address to saving passwords on certain sites. It is a convenience factor, but you have to weigh that convenience versus the potential to have that information used by someone else. Okay. Okay. And in our handout that we have, for anybody who wants the handout afterwards, we'll send it out with the follow-up email. We do include how to do this with Firefox, Chrome, and Edge for how to check that information. Okay, so here's a little bit more about two-factor authentication. And then some things to consider. How you would keep your information safe. Consider if you want to save the passwords on your browser. Consider making the passwords different and making them strong. Saving credit card information on websites. Maybe you want to, when you have the option of save this for future use or not, you say don't. Don't save it for future use. I'll type it in every time I use this site. Consider your banking and your financial, like Rebecca just said, bank or financial information, accessing it on an unsecured network. Make sure you're considering whether or not you're doing that. Consider what sites you might want to use two-factor authentication on. You can make up answers to security questions. I think security questions aren't used as often anymore for challenges, but if it's what's the name of the first pet you had when you were a kid, maybe you don't want to use the one that everyone knows you had for your first pet when you were a kid. You're going to use Fluffy instead of what your pet's actual name was. It's up to you. Suspicious emails or clicking on suspicious links. Again, remember we talked at the beginning about making sure you know the address of the website you're going to so that you don't accidentally mistype something. There are sites out there that are designed specifically for if you had mistyped something that take you somewhere else where you didn't mean to go. So, and then suspicious activity or practices. Sometimes you can find out this information through tech articles or organizations that kind of monitor and watch for these things too. Okay. This is some more. So we talked about virtual private network, which is the bottom on this list, that it's an encrypted connection over the internet that helps prevent unauthorized people from watching what you're doing on a network. Two-factor authentication we talked about. Hypertext is the computer language that's being used to generate website links in the background. Encryption is basically meaning that it's been converted into a code that hides the true information to help keep it confidential. Cookies, we sometimes get asked about cookies on websites, and cookies are these little tiny, not tiny in the sense of small, but they don't take up a lot of space, but they do help a website keep track of your visits, and you can delete the cookies. And cache is storage space for temporary files that sometimes makes a device run faster. So sometimes you want, if somebody tells you to clear your cache, it's essentially clearing your cache and your browser history and things because the server's the computer's trying to call it up a little faster for you. Okay. And then a couple of additional resources. Again, Digital Learn and GCLF Learn Free are great resources for information about internet privacy and how to navigate a website and about the internet in general. And then I wanted to make sure I put some stuff in here about password managers because that's something we were getting asked a lot last time we taught this workshop. So there are some links to a couple of sources where they've evaluated and reviewed different password managers. And again, thank you everyone for sticking with me. I know we went just a little bit over now. We're still averaging about an hour and 15 to an hour and 30 minutes for these. Any questions about that section or in general? I know we went through the safety and security stuff pretty fast there.
I don't really see anything.
Okay. I'm going to share this other one real quick. Our upcoming workshops, we have information on audiobooks and ebooks and magazines that you can get through the library to your tablet or smartphone or your computer. That will be next week. Rebecca's going to teach that one. And then we're going to continue that with movies, music, and more. These are things you can stream or download to your devices that you can get through the Champaign Public Library or some of the other libraries in the area. And then here is my information. Rebecca can put that in the chat as well. And again, if you have follow-up questions too, feel free. I know that was a lot of information to kind of throw very quickly out at you too. And we will have an activity sheet that we will send out with the follow-up email that has some of these things for you to consider and some matching of terms that are in the beginning of the handout too.
Do you want to cover the feedback form?
Yes. So questions, again, we have the Book a Librarian service, we have live chat and email, and then we also have a feedback form that Rebecca's going to put the link to in the chat, and then we will also include that in our follow-up email. If you'd like to give feedback about this workshop or any of the other workshops you've taken since January, if you've taken a couple of them beforehand, you can certainly fill that out for us. We do take the feedback to heart, and we do, as you saw, incorporate stuff like bookmarking and clearing browser history was something we didn't include in this workshop originally, but people had asked for it. So we do take your suggestions.
My name is Jacob Johnston, Community Program and Engagement Coordinator for the Urbana Park District. I really hope that you've been enjoying our CUWise content, and today I'm going to show you how to access all of that content from youtube.com anytime you'd like and absolutely free. The only thing you're going to need is an internet-ready computer, tablet, or smartphone, and let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we would like to do is find an internet browser. For today, I'm going to be using Mozilla Firefox, so I'll go ahead and double-click it. And it's worth noting that today I'm going to be using a desktop computer, but again, You can access all of the same content from a tablet or smartphone through the YouTube app. All right, now that I'm in the internet browser, I'm going to locate the address bar at the top of the screen. It's this big white bar that says bananaparks.org. However, I don't want to be under bananaparks.org. I want to be at youtube.com. So I'm going to backspace out of all of that and instead type in youtube.com and hit enter on my keyboard. And while YouTube is loading, I did want to note, if YouTube is something you're unfamiliar with, don't stress about it. Find somebody who might be a little more familiar with YouTube, and I'm sure they'd be happy to show you the ropes. All right, now that YouTube is loaded, we're going to find the YouTube search bar. Keeping in mind that we want to use this YouTube search bar and not the address bar at the top of the screen for our next step. So in the YouTube search bar, I'm going to type in UPTV6 and then hit enter on my keyboard. If everything goes as planned, we should see the channel UPTV6 here, and I'll click on the name in order to access the channel. Now, UPTV6 puts out an awful lot of content, so it's important that during this next step, you click playlists so that we only see the CU-wise content and not all of the other awesome content that they have. Although, if you do get bored of enjoying our CU-wise content, there's an awful lot more for you to check out here. But I'm going to click on playlists. All right. And our first playlist over here on the left says CU-wise TV. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. All right. And if you've made it this far, then you have access to all of the CU-wise content that is currently published along the right side of the screen. It's going to be organized chronologically by date, so make sure to check it out and let us know how you like it. Again, my name is Jacob Johnston, and we really hope you enjoy CU-wise TV. See you next time.
Thank you for tuning into CU-wise TV. We hope you enjoyed the show. This video can be accessed anytime on youtube.com. In the YouTube search bar, type in UPTV6 and look for their microphone logo. We hope you will join us again next week for more local, engaging content designed specifically for Champaign County older adults. Take care and stay safe.